President Trump has spent some of his last days in the White House pardoning close colleagues and allies, including Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. Also included in the second wave of pardons is Charles Kushner, father of President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. 60 of the 65 pardons and commutations issued by the president have a personal connection with him, and nearly half of them were announced in the last 2 nights. Michael Cohen, however, was not on that list. Cohen was handed a 3-year prison sentence in 2018 for fraud and lying to Congress during the Russia probe. He is now serving that sentence in home confinement. Let's bring in Michael Cohen, who served as Mr. Trump's personal attorney for over a decade. Michael, happy holidays to you.
To you as well, Jeff. How have you been?
Been busy. I mean, you see what's in the news these days, right? I think all of us in the news business have been busy trying to keep up with what's going on in Washington, and specifically President Trump. He's handed out these pardons. What do you make of these pardons? Of course, as I said at the top, you didn't get one.
No, and I didn't expect one. You know, I saw a tweet by Senator Cory Booker, and I thought that Cory had summed it up perfectly when he said, and he tweeted, "A pardon is supposed to be an instrument of justice, not a tool of corruption." Now, I had said this before, and I will say it again, that I was not interested in Trump's pardons before, nor am I interested in it now, because I truly believe that those who are accepting Trump's filth will have the stench of corruption following their name and their families' names for decades to come. And I think what he has done here by ignoring the way the process works, by ignoring the pardon office completely in order to feed his need and the needs of his supporters who have done wrong to this country for so long now, for the last 4 years. It's just it's just another disgraceful Trump act.
Well, listen, in fairness, I had to look back, do some research before we got online for this interview, because I wanted to see how many different adjectives President Trump has used to describe you now. Okay, and I think that's fair to mention. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but what I will say is that he's called you a liar numerous times. So what I'm asking on behalf of our viewers here is, why should they take your word over the president's?
Well, I think that everything that I have said, I have shown through documentary evidence to be accurate, that the New York State Attorney General herself, Tish James, is using my statements in order to now prosecute, as is Cy Vance. Robert Mueller's office turned around and stated that my testimony was not only credible, right, and 100% credible, but it was also extremely important in the completion of the Mueller investigation. So whether they believe me or not at this point in my life, I don't care. I happen to know that what I'm saying is true, and I believe that the American people know that what I'm saying is true. The fact that Donald Trump calls me a liar should automatically mean that I'm telling the truth.
Well, listen, you worked for him for over a decade, and I think critics and supporters of yours alike will acknowledge that you have some insight into how he operates, what might be in his mind, and especially now when people are trying to track, you know, the latest happenings at the White House, which there have been a flurry of them. What do you think is going through President Trump's mind as we talk about the transition, we talk about incoming President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris? How do you think he is really handling this transition?
Not the way that he wants you to see on television or the way that he wants it to appear. You know, what Donald Trump did by leaving, heading to Mar-a-Lago, and at the moment that he landed and was safe and secure, that's when they started to release the names for the pardon. He used to do the identical thing at the Trump Organization. Right before Christmas, when they would hand out Christmas bonuses, he would take off and leave. And once he was either in flight or he was already down at Mar-a-Lago is when they would release all of the bonus checks. And that way, if you were unhappy with what you got, you had no way to reach him because he wasn't picking up the phone. That's exactly what he's doing now. Nothing really changes with Donald Trump. I mean, it's his pattern. And what he is right now is very, very nervous, and he's very scared because in 27 days, He knows that Joe Biden is going to be sworn in, and that's when there's going to be a plethora of litigation and subpoenas that are going to be flying around that he cannot control anymore with his corrupt attorney generals as well as his corrupt people that are, standing beside him.
Well, listen, the White House and the president specifically, they've called the Russia investigation a hoax over and over and over again. They've called some of these investigations that have sprouted up over the last, 3.5 years. They've called them witch hunts, politically motivated. But how confident are you, and why are you so confident that he is going to face a mountain of legal issues once he actually leaves office?
Because I've been questioned by the Attorney General's team on many occasions now, as well as the District Attorney's Office, even when they came to visit me when I was up at FCI Otisville. So the answer is, I know what it is that they're looking for. I know for a fact that they are well prepared, they are well documented in their evidentiary evidence, and I do believe that there is a mounting amount of evidence that they will be prosecuting upon.
Well, so when you had those sessions with prosecutors, what type of question were they asking about President Trump?
Right. I'm not going to get into the sum and substance of my conversations because it's an ongoing investigation, nor do I want, in the event that the president or any of his individuals will be watching this program, to have an inside look into what is being investigated. But rest assured, they will know relatively quickly. It has to do with his finances. It has to do with his tax returns. It has to do with his properties. It has to do with the personal financial statements that he had made and provided in order to obtain loans. There is a multitude of evidence that they have that they intend on getting to the bottom of. And some of it, of course, is civil, and other parts of it are criminal.
Well, maybe you can help explain something, because a few months back, and I know this is all a blur to the public at large, but for those of us who follow these cases closely, there was all this talk about $400 million that President Trump owed someone. No one seems to know. If anybody knows, it's you. Who does he owe that money to?
Well, the $400 million, I don't know where they came up with that money. The amount of money that Donald Trump owes to various groups of people, it's predominantly Deutsche Bank, and it's related to mortgages that he has on his various properties. Now, the way that the documents that were produced by the New York Times, which was a wonderful article, and it was extremely accurate, the thing it didn't take into consideration is the fact that he owns 30% of two investment properties along with Vornado, and that number was not included. If you do include that amount of money into, and that, by the way, happens to be his best owned asset and the only performing asset that he actually has in his portfolio, which is kind of interesting that the two assets that he doesn't control the majority or operate are the best performing assets, but he has obligations on those two properties as well. That brings the total to over $1 billion in mortgages.
$1 billion in mortgages.
Yeah, that's correct.
And these are deals and details that you have intimate knowledge of because you worked on a lot of those deals.
I didn't work specifically on those deals. I just have knowledge of it. And as to the exact specific dollar amount, is it $980 million? Is it $1.1 billion? I don't have the exact to the penny dollar amount, but it is in the $1 billion range.
All right, and you did work on the Moscow Tower deal, which again is something that people have sort of forgotten. Do you think that is a project that will be revived once President Trump leaves office?
That's an interesting question. First of all, I want to repeat that it was a failed real estate project. We never actually went further than a letter of interest that was signed and executed with a foreign partner from Moscow. So it didn't even begin simply because the foreign partner and his representative was unable to provide me even the most minutia of information that was required. And that was, where is the property going to be located? Do you own or control the property that you intend on having us design the building for? So we had a design concept for the building, but there was never a piece of property within which to put the building on. So you never knew how big the building could or could not be.
But these, listen, these conversations went on for months. There was the January letter. I'm not going to get too deep into the details of this case, but there were ongoing conversations with people in Russia about this deal for months heading into the summer of 2016 as the general election was heating up.
And that's what I ended up pleading guilty to, lying to Congress on. Think about it. What I lied to Congress, which was at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump, was the number of times that I engaged in conversations with Mr. Trump regarding this failed Moscow Tower project. I stated in my comment to Congress that I spoke to Mr. Trump on 3 occasions, when in reality I spoke to him on 10 occasions.
All right. So looking ahead in your life, frankly, in home confinement, I'm going to bring up President Trump here because you would tell me all the time you were close to President Trump. You valued President Trump. I think it's fair to say that President Trump, your interactions with him as Donald Trump, the real estate tycoon, it changed your life. Financially, definitely changed your life. It is, in some ways made you a well-known household name to a lot of people across this country. Why did you turn on him after all that time? Because he wasn't returning your calls? What was it?
No, I think you have the whole thing completely misconstrued. I didn't turn on him. What I did is I told the truth, because not telling the truth is what got me into trouble. So it's not an issue of I have an animus, which I do have an animus towards Donald Trump, because what I did at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. And for him to lie and to sit there and to attack me and to attack my family and to do the things that Donald Trump does to people, right, which is to wreck their lives because you're not willing to go along with his narrative any longer. I could not. I couldn't do it any longer. And when I started to realize that I was being used by Trump and the administration as his scapegoat, right, for his dirty deeds, I didn't want to end up being remembered in history as the villain of Donald Trump's story. That was not going to happen.
Okay, so let's talk about, and we just have about 30 seconds, and I apologize about putting you in this situation, but I wanted to mention what happened earlier this week. You have filed legal action against the Bureau of Prisons. You think that you should be getting credit for time served because of your behavior in home confinement that would essentially shorten your sentence. Do you see that argument working?
Yeah, so let me, again, you're misconstruing it there, Jeff. I filed 2 actions. The writ of habeas corpus is relative to me individually, but I simultaneously filed a writ of mandamus, which will affect those eligible out of 153,248 federal inmates that, pursuant to the First Step Act, this is the only bipartisan document that was put forth on prison reform, states that earned time credit must be given to inmates that do work programming as well as educational programming. I did it, as did many of these other 153,000 federal inmates. And there is another case that, by coincidence, was handled successfully by my former attorney, who had gotten me released the second time after Bill Barr and Donald Trump had me remanded back to prison because I refused to waive my constitutional rights and not publish my book, which became a #1 New York Times bestseller, Disloyal. So do I think that the answer is we're going to be successful? Yes, because there's already precedented case law on it. It's called the R.E.A. Goodman case. And the R.E.A. Goodman case states that under Section 3632, the Bureau of Prisons is required to provide you earned time credits. They have not done that for me. They're doing it against me because it's, again, retaliatory. That's just who these people are. And on top of that, again, the more important document is the mandamus, because it's going to change prison reform, not because Trump wants it, because that's the way the law is written. That's the way the First Step Act as a statute was written.
Listen, you've been very gracious with your time, but, the Bureau of Prisons might look at this and say, what is he talking about? He's doing interviews. He's written a book. You're getting the kinds of benefits that most inmates don't see.
Right. So what does that have to do with the writ of habeas corpus and the writ of mandamus? What I'm asking them to do is what they are required to do pursuant to statute. Bill Barr executed the First Step Act signed by the president in 2018. As of today's date, they have failed, and failed miserably, to provide me and the members of the 153,000 of my federal fellow inmate brothers. They failed to provide us with what we are entitled to under the First Step Act, and that's earned time credit. It's no different than individuals that end up taking a program called RDAP. RDAP, Residential Drug Alcohol Prevention Program. It's the same exact thing. And this is supposed to give you an opportunity when you meet certain criteria. Please understand, my sentence level is at a 0. There's no recidivism. I mean, how many more porn stars am I going to pay off on behalf of a presidential candidate in my life? What's the chance of recidivism? It's 0. And some things that people don't know is that the alleged tax violation, I ended up paying what was tax owed prior to sentencing. So my case is very, very different, Jeff, and I plan on exposing all of it in this second book that I'm working on right now, which I'm going to call The Department of Injustice.
Okay, Michael Cohen, really appreciate your time. Happy holidays to you and your family.
And to you as well, and to everybody over there at CBS. Merry Christmas and happy holiday.